we are all feeling the same thing. So the economy is being somewhat of a mending force in this race because we could sit upon race. They could try to sit upon race, but their racial counterparts are no better than they are. Where we need swift action, we are seeing what happens when you wait, when you're allowed to have the filibuster involved, when you're allowed to not pass things that could be important for later on. But when you have people's lives in your hands, like a president, like politics, you have to be kind of contrary to the business entrepreneur that runs their own shit.
Yo, welcome to Living with Good with Dom. I sat down with my guy, Stephen Smallwater, and we talked about what's going on in the presidential election. It is hours, minutes away. And now we give you an in-depth conversation. We talk about the broad swipes and the nuances. This is one of those conversations that you've been hoping to be a part of, and now you get to be a part of it. We went into territories that were not commonly untaken, said things that folks would be scared to say in real life, expressed opinions that people will hold back usually because they're scared of being judged. So in this special edition episode of Living Good with Dom, we bring you a conversation regarding two black men speaking on Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. What are the nuances? What are the broad strokes? What are the truths? What are the things people are scared to say? You're gonna hear them all right here. This is a podcast worthy of listening to all the way through.
I'm in New York City, in Brooklyn with my main guy, Stephen Smallwater, an immaculate filmmaker, storyteller, director. He does DP work and etc. But this storytelling, this filmmaking, a motherfucking word.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, we came in a band in the same close time in the creative world. I'm actually in this brownstone in Brooklyn. This is where this room, not this exact room, some remodeling happened, but when I first came to Brooklyn, his family opened their home to me for like a solid 4 or 5 months while I got on my feet, while I got saved enough money for my job to make moving not take everything from me. You feel me? So I stopped back to New York on my East Coast tour. I feel like I'm going back through life, bro. That's crazy. So that was like how our whole come in.
Yeah.
And now we here. Steve and I we were talking about the election. I've been waiting to talk about this too, because this is like and it's so nuanced. I feel like
nuanced.
Two things here. We both from Howard.
Yeah.
Both graduated from Howard. Went to Howard alumni. Both black men. Steve, your roots are Barbadian, Bayesian roots. Yeah. So there's a loyalty from my perspective to how I ride in my life. I have a loyalty to black progression, and I have a growing loyalty to Howard and the folks in Howard's community. So when Kamala pulls up, even when I may not be the most excited for her, Kamala, excuse me, Madam Vice President, most respect to you. When Kamala pulls up and I'm seeing her, and I'm evaluating, and I'm decided if I'm gonna cast my vote. The truth is, she sits on two pillars of my value system, which is blackness and which is seeing my community grow, which is the Howard community as well. But the truth of my truth is, I'm not the most excited about what I see, but excitement doesn't gear me towards what my decision is, but it makes me see what others have you seen.
Yeah.
Cause that's how I see it. I'm like, okay, no matter what happens, whether she wins or she loses, I'm gonna be okay, because I'm gonna see both sides of the party, and I'm gonna make a decision based on who wins the war. You know what I mean? But so we were talking about less about who we were voting for, more about what's actually happening in the race.
Yeah.
I just want to give y'all my comment so you know where I stand, because why not?
I think you bring up something very important. I don't think anybody, almost even including the candidates, feels good about where we are right now. And I think once we can accept that, then we can actually start having like a real conversation, because it's not just this is not as much as America likes to put it as a us versus them, or like this kind of like energy of almost like a football game, because it's almost hilarious to see like the politics being played like a football game.
Right now.
Yeah, there's much more nuance because number one, we live in a more nuanced world.
Yeah.
And then number two, we're also in a space now that I think that, given international politics or the things that are happening internationally, international policies, and then home, what's going on at home. And then at home for America is always what are states doing versus what is federal doing. There is so much inside of what's going on, especially after COVID, that it's not an easy thing to say, yeah, I just like this person or I like that person. It's not easy. There's a lot of things that I think you have to kind of pluck at to really find a space where you can make proper decisions.
You feel like most people are making judgment based off those nuances, or they're making judgment based off of the more broad swinging things? I don't like the way, I don't like prosecutors, or I don't like Democrats or Republicans. I know weird thing about the nuances. I like digging into the nuances, but I think there's a smaller segment of people who are, that's the company that haven't agree with.
Yeah.
I see these nuances, but does that sway?
I don't think that everyone, I think more people are thinking about broad strokes. I think more people are thinking about broad strokes.
Let's take broad strokes for a second.
Yeah.
Broad strokes primary. What is your evaluation of Kamala's chance of winning, just off the broad strokes that most people will be perceiving from media, from past large historical events, like from her vibe, his vibe, Trump's vibe?
To me, and I think to most people who could see broad strokes, it's going to be a super close race. I think one of the ways that we could determine broad strokes on a general basis is there've been a lot of betting.
Betting?
Yes, there's been a lot of
betting.
Betting.
Oh, okay.
On who's going to win. And right now, in a lot of the sites that are primed to bet, where people are actually spending money on, so there's actually some sort of risk. You could bet crypto and stuff like that. They're seeing it as close with an edge to Trump, and I think that is where I think that is from the broad strokes of the economy is bad right now. Even though it's actually being lifted up and it's turning back around, it's still, you don't feel it. So broad strokes, if I'm still paying this amount for groceries, you're not gonna feel like it's getting better, especially with layoffs and contracting happening in a lot of industries. Broad strokes, we are at the precipice of what would be a major conflict and war internationally. Broad strokes, nobody wants to be in that when they can't pay for food. These are broad strokes. What got us here and what the nuances of why we are here and what we are actually feeling, that is where you start to get a little bit more of a idea of what the real bigger picture is.
Do you agree with the betting stats right now that it's a close race with Trump? I saw yesterday, and this is a clip off TikTok, so I can't really tell you what it knew. Like MSNBC was definitely a station. It said out of the battleground states from the polls, Trump was up out of 5 out of the 7 battleground states.
Yeah, right now the polls and what we've seen
from fact check that,
and what we've seen from the polls, honestly, and mind you, again, I'm a filmmaker that just digs into topics, yes, but from what we see in the polls, though, since the 2016 election, have really faltered. People aren't really going by the polls because they saw the polls in 2016 betrayed them. Yeah.
Yo, but you know who did get that race right? I did. I mean, listen, I was driving. I think I may have told you this before. I was driving from New York to North Carolina. We stopped for gas. I saw two little white boys with no shoes on and holes in their clothes. And I had never seen white poverty like that, personally. And I'm like, damn, and black folks, when we struggling, we got a swag about us still, so it don't feel like it, but it felt like it just felt like struggle. And I was like, that's deep. I looked up, I'm in a whole town that looks like we could have been in 1930s. And I said, oh shit, that's who he's talking to.
Yeah.
Nobody, and it was just nobody else I've ever heard even talk about white poor people.
Yeah.
Publicly.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Yeah.
So for me, that ain't changed. White people ain't less poor, and less people, they tend to blame progressive or blackness sometimes for their plot in America. Sometimes like, yo, are we this way because y'all giving money to the blacks and the Mexicans and the gays and it should be coming to that. They're not whatever.
I mean, it's what they're talking about, immigration right now.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't see that changing, so I don't see them changing.
You know what changed?
What? Stimulus?
Nah, he won in 2016, which actually put him in a worse position now, mainly because he was seen as somebody that was different than the politics that they abide by, right? Yeah. That same demographic would have said that's their guy because, he has money and he knows the system, but he's not a part of the system. He's going to break it down. Unfortunately, he actually became president, and we've seen him become ineffective to them. So to your point, they haven't changed, and they see that they haven't changed as well.
Okay. So maybe I think the truth here is like, I may not be giving white folks who hold a certain caste intellectually and mentally over what race and socialization and society is like, I may not be giving them enough credit, right? Because my thought is this, right? If I still think America always boils itself down to race. Now it takes different names. It's left versus right. It's tradition versus progressive, but it usually is the same. Like, these folks feel like they're more progressive and traditional, and these folks feel like they're more less, and it usually breaks down amongst race lines and deals. So I'm like, does it matter that he wasn't effective, or does it matter more that he's just a white guy?
It matters that no matter, and one of the important ones is state versus federal, but it matters that those poor, let's call middle America, let's not say poor. Middle America is in the depths of high food prices, into housing prices. We are all feeling the same thing. So the economy is being somewhat of a mending force in this race because we could sit upon race. They could try to sit upon race, but their racial counterparts are no better than they are, essentially. So you could lean upon, I think those same people are leaning upon the immigration situation of like, they're taking our jobs and they're getting fed and they're not feeding, especially here in New York. Roosevelt Hotel has nothing but immigrants coming in, getting butted in.
I've been hearing about this and now I'm here. So you've been seeing it.
It's not seeing, but seeing it. I mean, you feel it, but but New York has always been a standpoint of immigrants coming in.
Immigrants from New York is new, but
absolutely.
And then Ellis Island.
Ellis Island was Ellis Island.
I mean, that was an immigrant station.
To be honest, and it's interesting that we go into this. I'm a first generation American.
Yeah.
And I do recognize that clearly because there is a different positioning to be having a history of blackness in America, and I stay true to that. But in Ellis Island, my family recently went to Ellis Island and saw that, that the last name of one of our ancestors was at Ellis Island. So there's a realm here.
A white man or a Caribbean?
No, a Caribbean man.
Oh.
So there's a portion of this that is like, New York has always been the home of immigrants. Essentially, it's made up. It's made the neighborhoods are cultural enclaves.
That's true.
I think what we're experiencing now is that when things are bad and no one has an answer for why they're bad, they see what's different and label that difference as the reasoning for the bad thing, instead of
I can agree with that.
having the nuanced conversation. Again, broad strokes. Instead of having the nuanced conversation that's like, okay, well, how did we, let's say, react to COVID in quarantine? How did we react to that? And what is now the bounce back to it? We wanted everything to open up, but what is actually the bounce back from that? Like, what does look like?
You're saying that you believe, you're saying the sequence that you follow is borders closed, COVID lifted, borders open, and nobody thought about what it looked like for the borders to be open.
I'm saying that U.S. has a long international policy on this side of the world with a bunch of different countries. And if we're going to be the country that says we're accepting people, well, when a world crisis happens and we close the borders to what is everybody because we've had to, well, what does it look like when we open those borders back up that didn't have great policies to begin with? And that, to be honest, before COVID happened, when they were trying to get things passed, when Congress was trying to pass things at the border, they were being stopped. So what we're seeing now is in our system and how our system works, where we need swift action, we are seeing what happens when you wait, when you're allowed to have the filibuster involved, when you're allowed to not pass things that could be important for later on.
They call it kicking the can down the road.
Exactly. And now when you have, and we're going to continue to see much more climate change, natural disasters, what happens now that you don't have these things in place? Because there's no longer that we can't stop natural disasters, but we can prepare for them. So if you don't prepare for them, what do you expect?
If you say with immigration, they feel like we didn't prepare for it.
We didn't prepare for it. So now you have, and mind you, we're involved in maybe, what would be, I would call a dubious way as well, in the world. So when you have,
America's involved.
Yes, when you have countries' economics, falling and like dropping off of a cliff, where do you think those people are going to go?
And let's peel back that layer real quick. I think that's an important fact. I was talking to one of the homies, and shout out to my Filipino brothers and sisters, Filipino and Filipina brothers and sisters. But shout out to Dago, what's up? With much respect to you guys, I was talking to one of my Filipino homies, and I asked him, I said, yo, who are your Filipino heroes? You know what I mean? Like, who are like the evolutionary Filipino heroes? And they're like, I don't know. And I was like nobody fought against like the people who came in and made y'all speak English and put military bases, or like, I don't know. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm like, I just lost my train of thought, but let me get finally back.
The U.S. involvement in international countries, economically, financially.
And I was like, yo, I started asking a question because that thread being pulled, I was like, oh, so when most people don't know their heroes who fought for their culture, that means like some part of your history has been erased, but you have to remember that somebody actually fought against what happened.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I was like, yo, like, do you think there would have been a massive Filipino migration if something didn't happen to your country? And that's where the threads got real loose, because that's where the knowledge stops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, massive people coming to America, most times and most likely it's happened because somebody like America or a Western country has came in and raided the resources and put other people in power who were able to cycle the money. And now you got to go to America to make some money.
Other people depend on the U.S. as a nation, similar to how
we make them depend on.
We make them depend on us, and then we are now also, we have, rapidly entered the future. So a lot of systems aren't updated. We look at New York, for example. New York train system hasn't been updated forever.
I don't even put on riding train when I'm out here. I don't even like doing that.
Forever, right? Like it hasn't been updated, right? It still uses mechanical tickers. Like yes. So this is and it's
Separation.
You know, this is where preparation is important, because when we vote these people in, we're voting them into something that already is moving. And that's one of the points that a lot of people make about.
That's good. Say that one more time. So when we vote people in, we're voting this already moving. It's already moving.
They're not starting from fresh. Every president and every administration inherits an economy. Similar, Obama inherited a recession. We know that. As much as we talk about bailing out the banks and all that other stuff, which you could feel how you want about it, at the end of the day, that's what he had. That's what we gave him, right? And then the choices from that, as much as, you know, I would like student loans forgiven for sure.
Yeah.
And which is
that shit forgiven too.
Yeah, which is why I feel like it should be more widely done. But either way, DJT inherited a booming, a moving economy. It's a momentum of an economy is happening while we have these the politics every 4 years. There is political momentum already happening. There is economic momentum already happening. These are things that I don't think you can look at with broad strokes.
Yeah.
Especially when you're looking at, if you compare us U.S. to a country like China, for example. The thing that China has on its side is that they don't have elections every 4 years. They can deal with long-term policy. They can deal with long-term planning without disruption.
Wait. I know China is not a capitalist country, but how does it politics? They don't.
All I know is that it's a party that it's a party. I hate to say communist, but technically they are a communist party, but it's a republic is what China is. The people.
Are we republic for the republic for which we stand? Are we a republic too?
No.
Isn't that a lie that whatever?
Yes, but we're not. We're not in the same way. And I'm not.
What's a republic?
I'm not some type of a politician. I can sit here and be like, yo, this is a republic and this is not. What I know, what I know is that they have China has a system and a party that keeps people in power longer for a longer period of time. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna go in here and be on some like, yo, this is what it is. They're in power for a longer period of time than any singular executive branch administration is in. Congress, if we look at Congress and we elect, for example, judicial parties for a lifetime, imagine if that was the entire Congress or entire political system, where we're putting them in for a lifetime. That would be crazy.
Unless you were really on their side and they were working for you.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. So
this brain trust is just working on my life.
Yeah.
That's
so,
right.
And I feel like there is advantages and disadvantages of being able to set up policy for a long period of time. I think there is an advantage that the Obama administration had because it was able to set up a system that they were able to continue to push for extra 4 years. They had almost a decade.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to take the pin out of, it's like Jenga. It's easy to take it out and crash the whole building. So I do feel like some of what was happening from 2016 to 2020, what we saw is a lot of, pulling things that we felt or emotionally, I think a lot of Americans saw as like, nah, we need to close borders. We need to do this. But in actuality, we live in a much more complex system. Now, I don't think everything needs to be complex though. Yeah. Okay. I personally feel like, when we see countries able to make decisions like there's a school shooting, no more guns. I feel like that should be.
You like that's simple, like
I feel like there is
goodness other systems.
son. There is people are getting murdered at record rates because we flooded the streets with guns. We need to implement something in order to stop that.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty basic, but I don't think that our government and our Congress works in a way that is as fast as the technology has pushed forward. And I say technology specifically because if our communication increases exponentially, even more exponentially than someone like Tim Berners-Lee, who created the internet and all this other stuff, are kind of like, everything's going to speed up. CPU processing is going to speed up. It happened even faster than that. If that's happening as fast, communication is happening as fast. Intelligence, knowledge is going to happen at even more exponential rate. We have to implement systems that go along with the innovation and with the changes that our children are going to be adopting.
So what kind of, this is an interesting term. So if Steve is advising Kamala is advising Kamala, or whoever is president, let's say whoever, I think I look at things now just like whoever wins the wars, you gotta work your best to figure this out. Whoever should win, Kamala or Donald Trump, with that said about technology working faster than policy or system, what for something like information AI, computing power going mad fast, communication. Sometimes I call somebody, they'd be across the country, I'll call you sometime like, he's literally 3,000 miles away. It's a lag in this call. So what future do you see where that makes you say we have to not check what's about to happen, but be prepared for the speed in communication, be prepared for AI, whatever it may be? And what policy would you dare say, President of the United States, if you want to protect the generation after, you should be thinking about this?
It's not a single policy. I think what we need to do is really, and it's a good example. I'm going to use this example.
Okay.
Elon Musk has done an incredible thing with Tesla and SpaceX. We now see that like he caught one of the spaceships in midair in order to reuse it.
Somebody said that's like launching a 20-story building in space.
Absolutely, and catching it.
I was like, oh, you put it that way. I was like,
incredible. Yeah, incredible. Now
I didn't like how big it was.
Now the thing about that is that what makes him incredible in the sense of what he can do with SpaceX and Tesla is that he runs it from a one-man mind. He runs it in his way. When you have, and mind you, no lives are at stake when doing something like that. Innovation is great, right? To go into space is great, cool. No lives are at stake, really. You know what I'm saying? But when you have people's lives in your hands,
like a president,
like politics, you have to be kind of contrary to the business entrepreneur that runs their own ship. That's his own ship. Cool. He could do what he wants to do with that. But when you start to get into the fact that if him doing that, for example, and this will take some of the sail out of it a little bit, the wind out of the sail of that. It's incredible feat, yet Cuba doesn't have any power right now. For the past 48 hours, Cuba's in complete darkness. They can't get any power going in an entire country, and you don't really see, it's cool that he's able to catch a 20-story building from the sky, but you can't even get power, even if you wanted to another country. When those kids were lost in the caves, he said he would send over technology in order to find them. Human beings found those kids, not technology. So there's a realm here that the things that make our advances great with technology and all of that does not make our political leadership is not the same as the leadership that we see from the private sector. And I don't think you can commingle those things. The political atmosphere needs to be about the progress of human beings, not the progress of technology. Progress of technology is going to exponentially grow. The progress of human beings, we are still having complications where this has been like the scam era. People are still getting scammed with the fact that you can communicate 3,000 miles away. People are still getting scammed with, like, now they're doing AI voices, you know? If we can't handle the simple things as human beings, we need to figure out balance in a way that we can progress that effectively levels us up, as opposed to just, we're no longer at the point in time where we just need the imagination that helps out the country. We were there before in the industrial age. I think when you saw stuff like that, like, yo, there's a plane flying in the air, that's crazy. That really pumped you up. You know what I'm saying? That pumped the America up. That's like, yo, cars, innovation. Okay. Now, I don't think we're at that level. I don't think people are surprised by things, any type of invention or innovation right now. I don't think people are surprised by it. People really want to know, how does it help me? You know,
true. Hey, because when I saw the building first, the spaceship first get caught, I wasn't impressed. Yeah, it took me like 3 or 4 Instagram posts and somebody to word it in a way where it said, yo, it's like catching a building. And I was like, oh, well, some shit ever happened, I guess I can get out of here and come back. You know what I mean?
I guess. Yeah. But the likelihood that we're going to be needing that anytime soon is just very slim.
Yeah.
And the truth be told, this is how I see it, because I don't want to continue to ramble on. I want to really hit 1 or 2 things for sure in this. If we are putting money into space, but we can't get electricity to people, that is not a good priority. Our priorities out of whack.
Back to, I think we're going to turn to that, maybe a solution or a source of sorts. But back to what we said about immigration being a consequence of an economic or war action happening in somebody's country, destabilizing the country, that ain't been somewhere to go. I think about Cuba's relationship to communism philosophies, Eastern politics, like Russia. That's like Russia's homie. You from what I understand, that's where Russia tried to put his nukes one day.
I mean, they
did it, or
no? They were, historically, Cuba has been on the side of what would be communism, because the U.S. was the idea of democratization or democracy within Caribbean nations and within the South, like South America, was something that was brooding. It was imperialism. It was what it was, colonization.
Yeah. So my point real quick is, sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
To get back to the point, SpaceX launching a 20-story rocket into the sky, catching it. That's a Western-backed and supported and rooted company, right? Elon Musk is a capitalist, so he's an ideal capitalist.
Yeah. His defense contract is one of his biggest contracts.
Cuba has been the opposition of where the money and energy is flowing. So we talk about electricity.
Yeah.
We talk about how we have a place where you can't get electricity.
Yeah.
90 miles from the U.S.
Yeah.
It's mad close. And then but you went hundreds of miles into space.
Yeah.
But at that core differentiating factor was the ideology of how to live life.
Not necessarily, because Obama opened up some trade deals with Cuba, and that could have helped, for example, maintain their power plant, because their power plant failed. So maintaining it, Trump rolled those back. So then there were sanctions on them again. So
Yeah.
therefore, you do have some.
Look about ideology though, where I'm like,
Yeah.
idea of these people shut them from the progress.
Yes.
You feel me?
Yes.
Like it's
But even if you're not talking about Cuba, Puerto Rico, North Carolina, when natural disasters happen, if we can't effectively use technology in order to help build more houses, create more spaces where there's more innovation in being able to have dams and support, if we can't do simple things in order to extend the life of the general amount of people, then where is the priority? Even with innovation and the great things that we could do, we are smarter in this day. Like the general population is smarter. So you're in a space where it's like, yeah, cool, I guess, but I'm not trying to just get cheered up by seeing the man walk on the moon.
Yeah.
Because especially right now, we're having food problems. Food is cost a grip mainly, and we saw it heavily in quarantine and COVID, because our food distribution systems are centralized. Because our roads, truck drivers can't drive on the roads. There's simple things that have to be fixed and have to be looked at, and that is where we need to point innovation. That's where we need to point a lot of what we do politically in governance, because that's the thing. Technology and governance, they don't operate the same. I don't think that when you have your own private company or what have you, I mean, you have your own company, right? When things don't move when you don't move, and things move when you move. When you have proper governance, it doesn't matter who is at the top. Governance works in a way that it works because of things that were put in place and set up. It's why people still have healthcare today, right? So even though Obama's not president, there's things in our system that just, I think, we take this look at this single person having a lot of control, and I really think that we have to get out of that. And I do think that the two-party system is not good for that. And once we get proper governance, and once we have a mindset on proper governance, we will see technology have governance, because we're asking the people who make Facebook and all this other stuff to govern themselves. Since when have you been good? People aren't good at getting up and going to work out.
But how about governing a whole multi-billion-dollar, So you, if I was in a debate right now and we were on a political stage in a debate, I was like, so you're for big government.
No, I feel like it's so just archaic to be in a system, and I like technology, and innovation is something that I pride myself in being very good at. When I say good at innovation, I'm able to see and place innovation where there could be solutions. And I think that is where we need to balance the system. We have to stop thinking in ones and zeros, and we have to start thinking more binary. It could be 1 or 0. Two truths can exist. And if you can have two truths being existing, then how do you start solving problems from a place that both people are correct? How do we solve it if both people are correct? If states should have their rights, and the federal government should also be able to implement things for everyone, where do we exist in a balance? And right now, there's a lack. I think there's more balance than we give credit to because of what social media shows. But we're in a space that could tip over at any point. So I think we're very sensitive right now as a country.
Yeah.
Not the fact that we're not in a good place or the economy's not. I just think we're fickle and sensitive, and we have to accept that about ourselves.
Why? Because America hasn't always been sensitive around things. You even go back to comedy and see how comedy has shifted, and you like, damn, you like, ladies, something you could have said 2 years ago, you can't say it anymore, or 10 years ago, you can't say it anymore. What has made Americans, the West? I think it's the Western world, for particularly. What has made the West so sensitive?
I think is, to be honest, I think it's what immediately came to me is profit over peace. I think because we've been in such a position of capitalization over every little thing, when you capitalize over everything instead of figuring out how to use things efficiently for everyone, you literally cut out efficiencies. If efficiencies are not equatable to your bottom line, you don't necessarily recognize them. And what happens is it goes up and then just drops off a cliff. And that's, if you look at the markets do that too, right? Like, we're constantly in cycle. And I think that one of the things that
We say efficiencies. I get what efficient is, but I
efficiencies. So we talked about food, right? Problems with food because of its central nature. Most distributions of states and of food is so centralized that when there's an outbreak at one place, now we gotta recall the entire thing. The FDA is constantly recalling everything.
Yeah, coming from all one place.
It's calling from one place. So if that factory right there, something happened in it, they can't really figure out where it came from.
Yeah.
Instead of having more efficiencies within states and across the U.S. to have food centers in different spaces, when we equate that to technology, we're talking about node systems. This is what we're like. If you were to layer technology and the internet upon what we actually live, that's what we see that makes it easier to make a phone call. You know what I'm saying? It's not one telephone central place. There's a bunch of different nodes that we're able to jump off of, right? The same way that we deal with data. There's not one data center with everything. They disperse the data so that if one data center fails, the other one's still up. This is efficiencies in what we deem as technology, but those efficiencies have to live across our lives. We should be able to get great local food sources from different places. If New York State upstate has great honey, yeah, well, if you're local to New York, you can get amazing honey at a fraction of the place, so much so that I could go upstate, get honey, fresh honey that has no extras in it, and be able to sell it for almost double, triple the price anywhere else in the country. These are things that we have to start balancing again with, where we have regional things that are in effect to larger federal things. So, I mean, it goes into the conversation to just bring it into somewhere that's useful for this conversation. It goes back into kind of like states' rights and federal rights, but we have to get more specific about it. And the best way that we can get more specific about it is being able to govern technology that backs that. Because now we can use data that says, you know what, this much food goes this place, this much food goes this place. One of the things I would like to talk about before we go to is the idea that the food, the World Food, I forgot their official name. I think it's the World Food Bank. The head of the World Food Bank, I always thought it was interesting, and this is how I see where technology should be going. To me, technology should be going, every time there's a natural disaster, we should be able to have data based upon what happened. We should know exactly what is going on. If we can't stop it, we need the data from it. So I immediately think, in governance, we need technology to go to getting information that's beneficial for our country and potentially other places around the world. Especially if we're American, we can be other places. Whenever there's natural disasters in other places, it's a natural disaster that we can learn from so that when it happens to us, we know how to deal with it.
My other one said efficiencies. Because I'm thinking about it's the efficiency of being able to use technology. The efficiency will be like the nodes, right? The nodes allow for communication to produce a better outcome for a specific day.
Yeah.
Right? So if it's the World Food Bank should have the access to the information from the weather guys who know exactly what happens when a natural disaster happens, and the communication or the truck drivers in should also, that should be another node that comes to make a decision on like, How do we best help the people?
I always, getting back to that world food, that's what I was going to say. I always find it amazing that whenever there's a disaster or crisis in the World Food Bank is able to actually go into the center of where the crisis is at. And that's why they lost a couple people going into Palestine. I think it's fascinating that they're able to go there and deliver food. This is simple, but it's effective because it means, what roads are they taking in order to get into some of these disaster zones? How are they getting in there? And I'm sure that for defensive stake, there's probably information on this that's not public, but it's the World Food Bank. So like, how do we get food to places that need it the most, that are in devastation? How can we get data behind that so that we know that when there is a shortage, or if there's a situation that happens in America, in a state, if there's an outage in a state, New York has had outages before.
Yeah,
how do we get electricity to these places? Well, why don't we go to Cuba and see what's happening? Why don't we send technology and help Puerto Rico? And I'm not it's not to say that didn't happen. I do think that they used the Starlink, which is one of Elon Musk's products or what have you, in Puerto Rico and Ukraine. But these are the things that if we're going to be involved in the world, we should be involved in the world that benefits us, especially from a technology standpoint. But I do think that increasing, and this is what I really feel about New York too. I'm a native New Yorker. The one thing, I think we can do things that are that tag along the idea that, okay, the train system needs to be updated. Before an adjacent problem to the train system being updated, because maybe it can't be updated quick enough.
Yeah.
We need to upgrade the communication system within the train system.
Yeah.
Because what that can do is that can at least help us deal with these things, similar to communication helping us deal with natural disasters and helping us deal with things that we may not be able to have. This is the next 20 years or so is going to be a tremendous amount of unknowns. So we can't necessarily plan for things that are going to happen like natural disasters in a way. But I would say that given the fact of COVID, they did have a plan for that. They did have a plan that was already there.
They're like, this happens, do that.
They didn't do that. They waited to implement that, and it caused a little bit more damage, I would say. But you can be able to be agile, right? Like, you may not be able to plan for what's going to happen during the game, but you could take 100 free throws and you can make sure that your shit is straight, right? So I do think that we're in a time where these efficiencies help us prep for completely unknowns.
So this is where you're saying where technology, instead of being wowed by a building being caught in the sky, which may not have an immediate effect right now on planet Earth, there also needs to be, can you talk about structure and system where like government, that's where government steps in to help direct the resources.
Exactly.
Like, y'all cool, y'all worried about the deep future and where technology goes. We're worried about the people who are living and breathing now.
Right now.
So you focus there, and we will take that information that you in technology created, and we want to turn it this way.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that is important. I think the question I have next is, why do you think that doesn't happen? Is it the social, political, and economic constraints that having a nation based on capitalism doesn't give you the extra resources financially to then take this technology, buy it, use or take it, and use it for what you really want to use it for? You got to just get the helm of hoping that an entrepreneur feels like creating a foundation.
Capitalism doesn't need efficiencies. Its target is not efficiencies, it's growth. And sometimes you need to pause on growth in order to expand and use what you have efficiently. So
I want to stop there because I think that's a big problem for people in their personal lives and And I would say my personal life is like expansion, but the efficiencies, you might not even need the expansion if you may do it because it's cool, but you won't need it if you worked with what you had to create better connections and share resources and et cetera from what you already had.
Yeah, it's a bygone action of colonialism and imperialism in order to grow and take over. But we're in an age that growth is actually not as important as depth, as being able to do things with depth and efficiency. So a lot of countries, mind you, they've done the leapfrog. You see a lot of burgeoning countries that can get their food to the people, right? They have systems of electrics, of roads, super efficient. It's one of the main reasons why you do see China in all of these different small little countries that you're like, wow, why are they in these long? Well, they're literally using efficiencies to be like, yo, if we didn't have to tear down everything and we can just build from what they had because they didn't really have roads, what would it look like?
And now that in a global sense, they're creating the communication for the country of nodes.
Yeah.
And somebody's like, yeah, that's actually a valuable country over there. That's valuable too. If they were able to develop up, we can use each other.
Yes, and to be honest, the way that China is especially doing it is they're not involved in the culture of the place either. They just want to get what they want to get, and that to me is not necessarily bad or good. I mean, there's definitely a bad outlook. It depends on how you see it
and how much you over
leverage. But we're at a point now that technology has caused a great balance. Like this is why the unfortunate events of what happened in October 6th happened. This is why Ukraine is putting up such a fight beyond getting weapons from the U.S. You have smaller countries and bigger countries, smaller entities and bigger countries are now in a place where they can hurt each other efficiently. So this is where you have
to be a small country, and you might have the killing power or the might to dominate another country, but you can destroy their virtual ecosystems. Like you can you can hack their systems.
You can do damage. The damage is being done in vast amount of ways nowadays. Again, the world is not operating in binary. The world is not operating in ones and zeros. The world is like, yo, it could happen in any way. So this is where you have, people hacking systems, and this is where you have drones being super effective and having surgical missiles. These are things that are adopted by bigger countries, mainly because they know that the smaller guy could do this. And that's
even drone warfare in Palestine, between Palestine and Israel. It's like they used what they consider low level technology to
absolutely. And it happens on so many fronts that, once before it was just, okay, all out violence can balance things out. It could increase the economy. This is what wars have historically done. But now we're not at a point where violence and wars will help. This is mainly the reason why people don't, especially in countries around the world, including, Iran and proxy, Russian. They don't necessarily want to have a world war because no one is actually benefiting from this. Everyone is coming off of a lockdown on top of that. In a couple years, I can't speak for it. In a couple years, things may be looking a little bright for certain countries to have a little bit of a war. But right now, I don't think that it benefits it doesn't benefit anyone in the sense of dollars and cents. And because of that, we now are on a different level of conflict. Now we're on a different level where what supersedes ones and zeros, in a sense, is morals. Like, it doesn't seem like it does, but if you can actually gain an ally based upon morals without having to pay. You just got to send a couple troops. That's why I think we're seeing North Korea send a couple troops to Russia. Why North Korea is now in a stance and South Korea is now on some like, yo, if you do one more thing, because now we're seeing alliances happen, lateral movement is happening, because it's not one country being like, yo, we can make mad bread off of this and we're going to just go into war. Now it's like, yo, lateral movement has to happen. And what happens from that lateral movement, I don't know if anybody knows necessarily.
What I see happening with that lateral movement, I go back to your idea of the disperse of information, where it's not everything like consolidated into power. The consolidation of power usually happens because somebody wants to take power for their own control over the rest of things. And if that power, that central power that was, let's say, the West or the U.S., its allies begin to connect like nodes and say, we don't actually have to fight you. We just have to become powerful together. It gives me Soviet Union energy, where the Soviet Union was big, dominating big dogs, and then they went to like, we not weak.
Yeah.
But we not the 1940s.
Yeah. I mean,
the U.S. kind of this being a country that can hold its own might and still be good, and nobody will come into the borders, but we won't have the tentacles that control everybody else because they decided to like, we'll communicate together. We'll need your, we'll no longer back our currency in this dollar. We'll use whatever this regional currency.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's the U.S. always has to figure out how to balance over-indexing on military spending, for example, which as much as it spends on the military, yes, it's pretty obvious, and you find a lot of congressmen and women talking about being able to put money into other places that could be beneficial for us. If you look at it from a standpoint of if you were the America and you were in a position where you're like, yo, the fear of this, keeps people in place, then you start to have, and there's a term for this when we talk about nuclear power, where like there's a stalemate.
Yeah.
And because of that stalemate, I think that what you're saying is correct. There's other things that are now going to influence beyond the threat of force. Now, and that's where I do think that's where you see the reasoning why when the whole thing happened with Russia invading Ukraine, why the first thing that we go to as America in the past couple of years is financial trades. They just cut them off. Trades, we cut off. We stopped that because that is a form of force, right? Yeah. These are types of things that are like, okay, I think that energy in the future is going to be a form of force. We'll stop your energy, right? Energy, it's not, we're in, listen, when you start seeing tech companies invest into nuclear power plants, there is a long-term investment into power. And that is because what they call compute is going to be a standard. It's not going to just be oil. It's going to be, yo, what compute do you have? What, as a nation, what compute do you have?
How well can you process digital things?
Yo, how much energy
can you hold? Because it takes a lot of energy to process phones.
Exactly.
AI is a big energy sucker. Cryptocurrency is a big sucker. Yeah. All these digital things are actually physical.
They're actually physical. So if
that can be measured in CPU
or compute. So when you talk about, yo, what's your compute? Like how is your energy? If you have old energy grids,
yeah.
I mean, I don't want to stoke fear, but you know how easy it is to take out a state or a country.
I was watching they had a conference with a bunch of with Congress and war generals and stuff like that, or military generals, and they kept talking about AI and other stuff. And he was like, they were talking about the wrong thing. He was like, we're not thinking about the power grids. Our power grids have already been compromised. Like that's a button somebody can hit to turn off your power.
Just let me remind, because people out there may be like, yo, why do we care about Cuba? Cuba has no power. Just remember,
no information, no digital money.
They have no power. They are in the dark because of an old grid system. There are states that have old grid system. Michigan,
security down.
Michigan was without water, poisonous water, because of old systems. Let's not act like this hasn't already been happening. There has been power outages. There has been lack of fresh water. America is very good at seeming like everything is okay. And to be honest, you can point to any state at any point in time in the last, let's say, decade and pinpoint situations that have happened that are like, yo, that is just endemic of old systems. That has nothing to do with being able to go to space.
I'm gonna wrap this up by saying this. Kamala Harris, Madam Vice President.
They come after you for that.
Yeah, it's a direct to everybody. Kamala Harris, my sister, and Bison and Black dress. When it's time for you to choose a technology advisor, I'm looking at Steven Sloan.
Yo, thank you for watching this episode of Living Good with Dom. I want you to remember that life is good and it really boils down to your choices. This special edition episode came in the heart of the election season. We have 2 more episodes for you that are more self-growth, self-development, spiritual information that you can use to make your life go from just living okay to living good. So thank y'all for tuning into the first episode. We're going to keep this going into the platforms as big as any platform that ever exists. So thank y'all so much for being here in the beginning. And remember, Living Good with Dom is here to help you live good too. Peace.